We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. With Maxwell Silverhammer. We are nothing sacred. With cruise control. We are nothing sacred.
Oh, yes, bitches. Welcome to another episode of Nothing Sacred. I'm Maxwell Silverhammer.
And I am Cruise Control.
And with us tonight, we have our guest of honor, Ernest Stevens from the San Antonio Police Department, where him and his partner, Joe, actually started a mental health crisis unit. Ernie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like we do with all law enforcement, we got to tell you, man, thanks for your service.
Thank you so much for your service to your community, and we know it's something that a lot of people couldn't do and don't do, and so thank you very much for that.
It's an honor. Appreciate it,
man. So let's get a little background on your law enforcement background, as far as like how long have you been a police officer, where'd you start, that kind of thing.
Well, I got my first badge in the 5th grade as a patrol. It's probably like most officers did when they started out, right? But in reality, the day I turned 21, I took a job with the Terrell Hills Police Department, as a patrol officer, and spent 2.5 years there. And then I tested for the San Antonio Police Department, where I spent 25.5 years and actually just retired a week ago. So I've been there for a long time and spent a lot of time in a lot of different units as well.
Wow, you just retired last week?
I did, yes.
Whoa. Oh, wow, congratulations on getting through that and just being able to say, that you're retired. So you've got what are you going to do with yourself, just as a side, what are you going to do with yourself right now?
Well, I actually go out and I train other police departments now. So I was retired for about 2 days. And then,
yeah,
I was on a plane to Colorado, and I just finished some training out in Fort Collins, where I trained 18 officers and social workers in de-escalation, procedural justice, implicit biases, classes like that.
Sounds like my mom, somebody who just does not know how to retire. Yeah, actually, both my parents are that way.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm quote unquote retired. So you're quote unquote retired, but obviously you're doing other things in different areas. So
yeah.
Huh. So talk about the mental health crisis thing that you guys started.
Man, so that's kind of a cool story. It actually happened in about 2003. I was actually working patrol. I was working the dog watch shift, and my partner at the time, William Casberg, signed me up on my day off to go to this thing called crisis intervention training. And I'd never heard of it. I got back to work, and I was told that I was going to be attending this training for a week. And, when you work dog watch and you go to training, you actually get a weekend off and you go to daylight hours for a week. So I really didn't care what kind of training it was until I heard that it was how to recognize, de-escalate, and assist people in a mental health crisis. And about lost control right there, because that right there, guys, was the call that I didn't like getting. I didn't understand mental illness. I was the last officer you wanted to show up at your house if you had a mental health crisis. And so reluctantly, I took the course.
Well, why, just to stop you right, why, if you don't mind answering, why is that? Why were you the last? I mean, just not a lack of just.
They didn't train me for it in the police academy. We had zero mental health training. So, when you're ignorant about, something, then you do your best to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole and hope you did the right thing. Gotcha. And that's what I felt like I was doing when it came to mental health, because I had no training. I had no idea how it presented.
Yeah. So your intentions obviously were to try to calm the situation down, but you didn't have the ability or the training to really do that. In fact, you probably might have done things that would be the opposite of that, even though you thought it might be the right decision at the time, but you didn't have the training. Was that, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's a very accurate statement. And not only that, I probably did worse than that. I probably arrested the problem instead of trying to focus on the person.
So when did you have your change of heart? at the
Well,
training?
that happened. That happened on day 4 of the training when an elderly lady came in from the community and talked to us about her son that has mental illness. And she made a profound statement, guys. She said, one day one of the officers will probably have to respond to my house, and you might get scared of my son. You might not understand him, and you might actually shoot him and kill him. And I want you to know that I understand that you have a family to go home to, and I just want you to be safe. And, when she said that, she was reserved to the fact that that was going to be the only outcome for her if she had to call the police. And it was at that moment with that statement that I, changed my career path entirely.
Wow.
Man. So how does Joe work into the equation here?
Joe's an idiot. No, so Joe.
I doubt he's going to hear the interview then. Is that the case?
He's going to be the first one I send it to. So update with Joe. Joe was on the San Antonio Police Department for 14 years, and then he just resigned 3 months ago to pursue a training business as well. So we're basically doing about the same thing. We're just dividing and conquering, I guess. But where he fits in the equation is about a year after the unit was started. It was only 2 of us. They had made an announcement that they were going to add 2 more officers in 2009 to the unit. And I'm walking in the back door to headquarters, and here comes this, young kid, wet behind the ears. And, he's like, "Hey, Officer Stevens, I was thinking about putting it in for that mental health unit." And I'm looking at him going, "All right, dude, whatever. Like, where the material is, just look in the general manual, understand, what we do, and good luck with that." And he did well in his interview, obviously, and he was selected to be one of the next officers on the unit. And within a few years, we were partnered together.
Wow.
Hmm.
Man, quite
So it's interesting talking about mental health units because, there's been a lot of talk about that lately in terms of, just de-escalation or defunding, police departments. And we don't want to get into the politics of it. There's a completely different part of it. But I guess where I'm going with this is there's a thing up here called Cahoots up in Oregon.
Yeah.
And they kind of like are the ones who go in there, but they're not. It just seems like it makes more sense for the people that are already going in there who are actually trained to actually defend themselves. Like the police officers should have the same kind of training. Like, why would it be separate, like in certain places and others? So it's interesting that you have that in San Antonio.
Yeah, we do. In fact, we started a co-responder unit probably back in 2000, and I want to say right when we started, 2008, because we had no idea, myself and Officer Casberg, what the hell we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
They partnered us with the local mental health authority and assigned 2 clinicians to us. And basically they told us, okay, you guys go out to these calls, make sure the scene is safe, and then shut up and listen and learn. And that's exactly what we did. For years, we got on the job training through master level clinicians on how to de-escalate and assist individuals in a mental health crisis. So it makes sense to me that this is happening.
So wait, just real quick, you just went into this without that much training. Like, okay, you're part of the mental health unit, so now you're going to go kind of learn on the job while you're dealing with these people, like in the actual live situations without really much training beforehand.
So you act surprised that in a bureaucry.
Yeah, I shouldn't be surprised.
This would happen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. With that came a lot of, local media attention. They're saying, hey, look what San Antonio's doing. They're partnering with local mental health authorities. They're taking clinicians on calls. And before you know it, everything just continued to snowball, where we had Nightline coming out riding with us, and then the documentary came out on HBO. So it was, it's been a hell of a ride. What's happened here in San Antonio.
Let me ask you, do you guys at least go to these calls armed, correct?
Oh yeah. We're just plain clothes. We keep everything underneath our, shirts, but we're showing up in blue jeans and a polo shirt, nothing that identifies us as a police officer until we take our badge out and then identify ourselves and then put it away for respect and discretion.
Which makes sense. I mean, obviously you don't, the badge is obviously definitely a trigger for certain things, obviously. And it's interesting though, how certain, like I said, like you can go in there and deal with these situations, at least knowing that you can protect yourself. Well, a lot of times in these cities, like I said, these they don't have that. They have these people that aren't really trained to protect themselves.
Yeah, and I got asked that in Fort Collins last week. Do we have any statistics of, use of force against some of these civilian clinicians? And I don't know if there's any numbers out yet or not. I think it's kind of early. I definitely think you still need to have law enforcement in the mix. Just they shouldn't be the de facto to everything. I know with like cahoots and what you're talking about, we also have one here called the SMART initiative through the sheriff's department. They're only going to handle probably about 6% of those calls that are very low chance of any kind of force at all. It's somebody calling in that's depressed, maybe having some suicidal thoughts, but not psychotic and out of control.
Right.
Gotcha.
Well, I saw a video.
That's where you. Okay,
oh, sorry,
man.
I may cut you off there.
No, I cut you off. You go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I saw a video last week, and it was a guy, and he's just completely irate, and he's threatening to slit the cop's throat, and he's got a knife, and he's calling her all kinds of names. So, the ones we see in the documentary are fairly tame calls, So do you guys ever get some of those where the guy's completely irrational and irate and screaming and threatening people?
Yeah, we've had a few. We've had, things thrown at us. We've talked to people, that are armed with firearms, usually on the other side of a door if they're barricaded. A lot of it is through phone contact. If the situation is just too dangerous to just go up there and force an entry if we don't need to. So, we're always going to make safety our number one priority, no matter what. But again, we also understand that what we're dealing with is mental health. A lot of the times. Now, can some of this be drug-induced psychosis? Absolutely. And is that what a lot of it turns out to be? A lot of times, yes. But, I think if you're using the training and the skills that you're taught through de-escalation, you're going to have a decent outcome without the potential of force being used.
Yes, it makes sense. And people can be, and this in your own relationships, in your own lives, that people can get upset about things and it goes out of control. So why wouldn't you use the same things in these situations, like just to try to, like I said, to try to avoid all the things that have been going on, recently with the news and everything else. So it's interesting that more de-escalation is not being, I think now it's being more reinforced now because people are more aware that it's even a word now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and with that comes, just teaching officers how to be socially intelligent. These are not skills that are taught in police academies. Yeah. These are newer skills, having to learn soft skills, emotional intelligence, things that actually will keep the officer safe, teach them the understanding and the fundamentals of procedural justice. And, this isn't a hug-a-thug, I'm not saying go out there and, this is all, handing out teddy bears and candies to everybody to make them feel better. But there's a smarter way to police, without ending up on the 5 o'clock news, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, and I think the officer sets the scene too. I think you said that in the documentary, where, if the cop comes up and they're screaming, drop the fucking gun, and whatever, then all of a sudden, it just works the guy up even more.
And it's going to work up the officers around him as well, right?
Yeah.
And we're supposed to kind of be watching out for each other. How easily can we spin each other up because of confirmation? We want confirmation from our brothers and sisters that we're doing the right thing. And, it's real easy to get caught up in a situation like that. So, the de-escalation is let's slow down, let's back up, let's really evaluate what we're dealing with here and not rush into a situation.
Yeah, it's almost, it's also, it must be hard though sometimes for, obviously police officers, because you get those cops that, who are very, very like, stand up, sit down and go hands, like very, saying like very,
like robotic
very,
almost,
but robotic, but they kind of have to be because they've been through they may have been in a lot of situations that they had, mental health issues with them as well, or whatever. But I mean, is that that can be kind of a problem as well? Like even simple interactions like that you have to rethink when dealing with.
And you use the word robotic, and that's exactly what I teach when I talk about procedural justice. Is people don't want to deal with a robot; they want to deal with a human being that will empathize with them and try to understand exactly what they're going through, based on the situation, and focus on, connection and not correction so much as to you need to do this or you need to do that. people really don't want to hear that. A lot of times they just want to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really just kind of a misunderstanding, sort of a communication break between officer and suspect in those
It
situations.
can be, and it can be also just a lack of training, because you got to think that the CIT training that most officers are getting around the country may not be the standard, because there's no consistency within the training. Some departments have an 8-hour training on just mental health first aid. Some of them have a 16-hour training. The training we did here in San Antonio was a 40-hour model based out of Memphis. But when your average police department across the nation is 12 officers, can you really afford to give up an officer for an entire 40-hour course on mental health training? That therein lies part of the problem.
Yeah. That's part of it as well.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, obviously you guys just respond to mental health calls, but my question is, what if something goes out as a domestic violence call, and before you know it, it's a guy suicidal? We interviewed a guy named Officer Joe DeLillo last year, and he was on a episode of Body Cam called 90 Minutes, and he went to something where originally the woman's ex was showing guns, texting her pictures of guns over the phone, and he just thought, oh, pissed off ex-husband, whatever. Well, as they did a little digging, the guy called back, and it turns out he was coming to the dance studio she ran to kill her, the kids, and himself, and he was able to de-escalate this really well. But so what do you do in that case? How do you differentiate?
Yeah, we actually have in policy down here now an escalated mental health call. So if patrol gets dispatched to a scene like what you described as a domestic violence, but then it takes a turn to where now the individual is suicidal, homicidal, or possibly mentally decompensated, at that point, they're going to activate our unit 24/7, and we're going to respond to that call. So, that's where we have a lot of intel, a lot of information to data sharing, so we can find out exactly who we're dealing with, if they've got any past history of mental health, anything at all, any past involuntary commitments, anything that maybe will give us some insight as to why this person's, emotional stability has taken, a turn for instability at the time.
Wow. So they just call you guys up. It's like they dispatch you specifically, I guess, in those
when
cases.
All else fails, call mental health. It seems is the way to go.
So, obviously you've had situations where you can't de-escalate. At what point, you try. At what point, I guess it's different for each person. That's another thing about when you talk about mental illness and mental health. It's such a large, encompassing thing. Obviously, different diagnosis for everything like that. But at what point do you just go,
this is it. We're shooting.
What do we do? Not necessarily that, but but we have to do something. And then what happens at that point? Because it's not like a normal. You can't put them in a normal jail, maybe, because they're on. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is the procedure?
And you're right, because not all of these are going to end up well. Joe and I were handling a call for an individual who found out that his wife was having an affair. So he shows up at the house.
Oh, shit.
He shoots her. He shoots the boyfriend that's there. And in return, the boyfriend shoots him in the foot, but he gets away. So the call comes out now that there's an individual up on a bridge wanting to jump. And, he's wanted now in connection with a murder. So, and an aggravated assault. So we get out there and, we've got a tactical team with us. We've got negotiators on the way, and, we're trying to talk to him. The problem was he had his cell phone and he was getting updates from the news. And when he found out that his wife was deceased, and, we had a harness on, getting ready to try to approach him on the bridge, because we'd been talking to him for about 3 hours and really not getting anywhere. As we started to approach him with that harness on, he looked at both Joe and I right in our eyes and said, well, it's now or never. And he just launched off the bridge.
Oh, shit.
So those are difficult, because even though the situation was, completely traumatic, for everyone involved, you still, at the end of the day, want to preserve life. It doesn't, those are difficult. And where they really turn difficult inward is when if it's an officer and it's an officer that you've been dealing with. And, you know, we had 3 officer suicides in 16 months on our department. And we were working with 2 out of 3 of those officers. And those ones are heartfelt as well, because you know them personally, you've worked with them in some type of capacity, and then you get the call, you know, that they've committed suicide. And those are difficult as well.
Yeah, we
Sure.
deal a lot with people who have specialized or focused on PTSD and just mental issues with police officers themselves. So I'm sure this whole experience in getting involved with this and working with mental illness has given you more of appreciation of how it affects you as an officer yourself and other officers as well.
It does, because it made me realize that I wasn't doing a whole lot of self-reflecting. Self-care wasn't at the top of my priority list as it is now. It was always, what can I do for other people, no matter what the cost? And that cost, you know, comes with, you know, you having family problems at home, you drinking, you watching too much porn, you doing the things that are, you know, negative coping skills to help you just get through the day. And that can take a toll as well. So you got to really prioritize yourself, because if you're not well and you're not at your best, what good are you to your community that you're trying to serve?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to help someone with mental issues, you know, when you've got dealing with your own in an equal measure, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Well, Joe admitted in the documentary that he suffers from some PTSD from some past stuff growing up and things. So it's interesting.
Yeah, he does. You know, and he'll share with you, you know, just like I would. You know, he had sexual trauma growing up as a child. He had physical trauma growing up, you know, from his parents. And then he goes off and joins the Marine Corps and is exposed to combat and had some pretty bad things happen to him. And then 8 years after he is discharged out of the Marines, he gets diagnosed with PTSD. So, you know, it started making sense, you know, why he was having all these issues. He just couldn't realize that the child that was molested, the kid that was beat, he was that kid every time he had to deal with something over in Afghanistan or Iraq dealing with children. He was having a hard time with that.
Wow, that's tough. Well, let's talk about the documentary a little bit. It's Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops, and you can find it pretty much on, well, I saw it on Amazon. But you know, I'll tell you the saddest part of the whole movie, man, the biggest tearjerker part of this whole your whole documentary.
Come on, man, tell me.
Was the fact that you turned down a pizza for a salad.
Wow.
I remember you guys talking about that at one point. You said, oh, I was going to have a pizza, but then I turned it down and had a salad instead.
Yeah, and him being an Italian stallion, man, that one caught me off guard for sure.
No, but there was some pretty, like for instance, the situation with Kendra, the one you found on the bridge that was going to jump.
Yeah, Kendra was tough, right? She and I want to point something out, because I get asked, you know, hey, does it help to wear plain clothes versus a uniform? And I always say absolutely, because, you know, your first, you know, use of force is your mere presence. And, you know, when we're showing up in jeans and a polo, that's not very aggressive look, and we're able to build rapport pretty quickly. But on that particular scene, Joe and I were working overtime, and we're in uniform. So right away, she sees the patrol car, she sees the uniform, and it's F you guys, I don't want y'all around me. And, you know, she was 3/4 of the way over the bridge. And I'm thinking, you know, here she goes. You know, I don't know if we're going to be able to talk this one down. And what was interesting about that interaction with her was, one, a lot of people question, well, why did you sit down, Ernie? Why did you sit down on the bridge? Well, number one, I'm scared to hell of heights, like bad. And I don't think I could have reached out for her if I wanted to. But number two, you know, again, why rush this? She's wanting to kill herself. She doesn't want to grab me and take me over. So when I sat down to show her, look, I'm not a threat to you. You don't need to be scared of me. I'm just here to listen to you and offer you anything that I can to help you, you know, get through this. And once she was able to see through the uniform and actually listen to the words we were saying, because, you know, at one point she said, you don't even know me. Why do you care about me? And I told her, you know what, Kendra, you're right. I don't know you, but I'm going to show you with my actions that I do care about you and that I'm here to help you. And I think once she heard that I was connecting with her on a human level and not being robotic, that's when she started to trust us and come off the bridge.
Wow. And also you humanized yourself. Basically, what happened is that she was able to relate to you, even though you were wearing the uniform. Because that must be interesting, though. Like, so you've obviously done both uniformed patrol work and plain clothes with the. Does it just wearing the uniform make you like? Do you have to get over your own?
Yes.
Kinda,
it's tough, because
kind of stuff,
Yeah, for years, you're always. It's funny because every year I do a conference where I go and I talk to people. That's called the Bear County Conference here in San Antonio, where people that have mental health issues will come to this conference, and I put on a class called Ask a Cop, and they can ask me whatever they want. And one of the questions I always get is, why do officers always stand with their hand on their gun, one on their taser, or both thumbs through their outer vest? Like, why do they do that? And, I'm sitting there thinking, well, it's just comfortable. I don't know how to say it other than that, because, this crap weighs 12, 15 pounds. And really, it's just an armrest. And they said, well, it's frightening. We see you approach us like that. And, I'm thinking, why do you want to shoot me? And so, you have to get past that when you're in uniform, knowing that just your body language sends a serious message to the person you're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's like the way when you wear a suit, like it's like anything else, like Max, or like I'm talking about, like when you wear really something dress up, you kind of walk differently and kind of feel a little different.
That's true. You carry yourself in a different way.
Yeah. It's like anything else. So it's like a psychological thing. You have to kind of get past that, and then you're like, oh crap, this Kendrick chick's on a bridge, so I'm just gonna sit down, and I'm just gonna, because sitting down, obviously, you're not standing, you're not up over her, you're kind of
towering over. Just drop the, get down here.
It calms you down, because the only you can't make a bold move either. You can't do anything like, oh shit, like can't make a sudden move while you're sitting down.
Yeah, and just wearing the uniform, your tone of voice is different, so that's something you have to check as well. It's your intonation, how loud are you speaking, how fast are you speaking, where are your hands, how close are you to somebody? It all sends a message. And, when you're trying to make connection with somebody that's having the worst day of their life, and you're already at that disadvantage because you're in a uniform, you've really got to choose your words carefully, your body language carefully, your expressions, your micro expressions on your face have to send that kind of message. So it's something that it takes practice, and you have to be self-aware and self-intelligent on what you're doing.
Well, I like how you guys follow up with them too. Like you go checking on them after the fact. It's not just like, all right, let's get this person to the mental ward and then we're out of here to the next call. You guys actually go, a day later and actually go to their house or go to their work or whatever and see how they're doing.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the job, because, when you're dealing with them with that initial call, it's probably one of the worst days of their life. And then when you give them some time, to decompress and deal with that situation and go back to visit them, in their environment, to see how they live. And now you've seen, just a different side of them. And, they're surprised to see you, because we don't, I always tell them, hey, I'll come and check on you. And probably a lot of people probably say that and then don't follow through.
Yeah.
But when we show up and we knock on the door, we say, hey, we're here to check on you. Where are you at in your process of treatment? What do you need from us? Do you need help with ID recovery, with food stamps, with Social Security benefits? Tell me what you need. And that's going to be the next step we work on together.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because it helps you, and that also helps you foster goodwill toward in the community. Like, hey, these people are actually people and they care. Break that bridge down that's been there, for a long time, because that is, there's a reason why there are police bars and not just bars, right? Like there are reason why, because it's a clan. You're in this where you're an authority, and it becomes authority and and citizen, right? You're not really feeling like you're a citizen, even though you are. You're just you're just fulfilling a duty that's different than other people that are doing it. But like, because there is a need for the tough cop, the cop that has to be able to protect. Like there is that need for someone who's going to be able to shoot someone. just the way it's just the truth, right?
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you bring these. I'm glad you bring this up because the director of the film is from Connecticut, but grew up in New York, and her uncles were all NYPD. So she grew up in a family of law enforcement, and you know, they don't have the best, um, I guess, relations with the community. I'm sure it's not bad in some parts, but in others, it's not real good. So when she came down here and rode with me and Joe and saw just, I guess, a different approach that we were doing here with our community here, she was just like, I don't understand, guys. Like, you let this one guy right up front with you, and Ernie, you sat in the back in the cage. I'm like, yeah, I mean, he's a patient. He's going to the hospital. He's not a prisoner. He's not going to jail. So if he doesn't want to sit in the back and he wants to sit in the front, I'm okay with that if Joe's okay with it. So it was just, you know, she saw the little things, and it was just, I guess amazing to her, because why else wouldn't she spend 3 years here filming a documentary?
Yeah. So that's how the documentary kind of got rolling.
Yeah, it did. She showed up, and you know, first we got a phone call from her, and she said, hey, I read a story that a friend of mine wrote on y'all in the Atlantic called Policing with Velvet Gloves. And it piqued my interest. And then I saw the interview y'all did with Byron Pitts on Nightline, and I'd like to come down and ride with y'all. You know, we get a lot of that. We're like, yeah, okay. And she's talking about how she's a filmmaker, but she shows up with no camera crew, no sound people, just an iPhone. I'm like, man, what kind of B movie? Like, what's happening here? And
Yes.
and she goes, honestly, I just wanted to get a feel for y'all. I just wanted to get to know y'all, follow y'all around, go on some calls. And she said, within the first 5 minutes, I wish I had my camera with me. So it was kind of, it was a good deal. You know, it all worked out.
That's cool. That's cool.
That's cool.
And it's just different perspectives now. I mean, and hopefully you've seen over the years just like a more of acceptance for what you do, you know, and DS, like I said before, because it still seems like, I mean, it's definitely growing. It's just like the whole idea of mental illness with police officers. PTSD has been really blossoming, and people are really understanding what's happening, you know, in that way. So
yeah. Last year, we had 236 officers commit suicide. So, you know, there needs to be a priority on mental health. I mean, hell, it's an epidemic in the police department that we're killing ourselves at a rate of 4 to 1 than dying in the line of duty. So, you know, yeah, we need to clean up. We need to clean up our own house and give it, you know, that'll give us the ability, hopefully, to help the community when they're in a crisis.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it just depends on, you know, you're right. And a lot of it is centered around, you know, drug and alcohol, mental issues and things like that, you know, and it's funny that this has never come to the forefront until recently.
Yeah. And I'm glad, you know, the documentary did so well, because it brought a lot of conversation back to the table about mental health and what our police department's doing about it. How are we approaching it? You know, do we have the resources we need within our community once we get to a call and de-escalate it? What do we have for the patient at that point? You know, because you can train the officers how to do great in the area of mental health, but if you don't have the resources to help the patient, what good is that really doing? Mm-hmm. So it took the entire community to come together to say, what can we do to make it easier for you to respond to these types of calls so we can help our own family members in our own community?
Yeah. I have an interesting question for you, because you said you obviously just retired this week, so you were doing the same thing that you've been doing throughout this whole pandemic situation, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. So how has the last 8 months differed from anything before that you've ever experienced, or what's your experience? Obviously, mental health is a huge issue right now, like just massive.
Yeah, good question. So as of within the last year, I was actually assigned to a program called the Program for Intensive Care Coordination, where I had a clinician and a paramedic assigned to me. And what the city did was they identified the top 100 most involuntarily detained individuals taken to hospitals due to their mental health, right? So we knew who our highest utilizers were, and our job was now to go out and pre-engage the crisis before it happened to try to reduce these hospitalizations. The problem that COVID presented to us was when the patients did end up in the hospital, part of our job as a team was to try to expedite their release if it was possible, if they didn't need further inpatient care treatment, and then find, either a group home, a transitional housing, a step down unit. The problem with COVID is we weren't allowed in the hospitals. So it was very difficult for us to work with the patient on a treatment plan for their discharge. In addition to that, we deal with a lot of adolescents who now we're showing up wearing gloves, a mask, safety goggles, and it scares the hell out of the kids. It really created a barrier. Now, on the flip side of that, what I did see positive was that the telemedicine and telecare appointments really expedited individuals into getting treatment and seeing a provider. Where if I picked you up today and took you in on an involuntary commitment, your provider appointment might be 6 months away. Well, with COVID and with the way they're doing it now with telemed and telepsych, you could probably see the doctor within a few days.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Do you think that's effective though? I just, telemedicine and things like that, because I guess it depends. If it's mental health stuff, then I guess it's okay. You're talking to people, but anything physically, I couldn't imagine that would be very,
Yeah, it's what it did is it provides access to care. And if you have access to care and all you need is to see a doctor to write you your script, well, that's where our team can come in and say, okay, well, we've got the budget to pay for your medicines. We'll go pick them up and bring them to you. So we can close those gaps that was preventing a patient in the past from getting that care and treatment and really expedite them in their recovery.
Yeah, so that's actually really, really a good point of all this crazy technology we have, because lately it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of it. Seems like everything's going nuts. So that's actually great that people that actually this situation has allowed that to become more used, and people are going, oh, okay, this is really useful. Because someone, if he even sees a face like at their home and they're freaking out, they're having a moment, and they can just pop on the monitor and like on a Zoom call or something like that and see a face that they recognize, but that's like trained to help them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The hardest population to help was the homeless population because, they don't have access to technology. So we were able to bring technology to the individuals that were homeless and say, hang on, watch this. We're going to jump on this thing called Zoom and you're going to see your doctor right now. And we were able to provide care and treatment out on the streets of San Antonio.
Wow.
Right there in the street. That's pretty awesome.
That's pretty amazing. But just in terms of like last month, because you were actually doing, seeing people on, patrolling and whatever. I'm not sure how that works when you get a call, but when you go out there and see someone, have you seen people that you think, man, if this thing hadn't happened, like these people would not be in this, they would not be mentally where they are. They would be okay. They would.
Yes. Yeah, because a lot of the individuals were going to day programs. A lot of the people that we dealt with go to day programs to keep them occupied and engaged socially with people during the day. And then at the end of the day, they would go back home to either their group home or wherever they lived. And those day facilities were shutting down due to COVID. And, when you take away socialization for people that really need it, to be connected, because like I say in the film, as human beings, we're made to be connected. If you go and unplug a lamp, it doesn't work. Same thing happens with a human. You unplug a human, he or she's not going to work, very good without socialization for a bit of time. So we did see anxiety go up. We saw depression skyrocket. The COVID caused a lot of issues through mental health, and it's just something you've got to find a way to work through because you didn't have a choice. You had to find a solution.
Yeah. Well, Brett,
Well, other than that, tell us where people can get in touch with you or where they can watch the documentary, all those kind of things.
Yeah. All right. So right now the documentary is streaming on HBO. I do believe you can do a 7-day free trial. And, you can watch it. And then if you don't want to keep HBO, you're free to cancel that. It's called Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. It's under the documentaries. I think you can also find it through Amazon Prime.
Yep.
And if you'd like to connect with me, I'm on Twitter. That's really the only social media I have right now. And that's at eStevens, ESTEVENS 0845 that's it, Twitter.
Okay, wonderful.
All right, cool. Well, we thank you for spending time with us tonight. And again, sorry for all the stuff earlier, but we got it working, and that's the main thing.
Yeah.
You know?
So it was really interesting conversation, just interesting times, and just interesting, just different perspectives, especially because, we need to figure out how to deal with this epidemic, and it's massive. So thank you very much for being on the front lines and being a part of it, and bridging that gap, being almost like the diplomats of the police department. Well, we'll think about it makes sense because you're dealing with people on a level where, that's not, like you said, like you're bridging that gap a little bit, or
But guys, I appreciate the opportunity to even be here tonight, because for you to keep the conversation going about mental health, that means the world to me. As somebody who's been an advocate, in this arena for 15 years. It's not a real sexy topic when you talk about law enforcement. I was in tactical units. I did it all. And when you talk about mental health, people just don't see that as police work, but it is. It's the civil side of the law mostly, but it's important. And it's an integral part that we need to continue to do our best to improve on. And, without your help and your, given the opportunity to talk about mental health on your platform, it wouldn't be possible. So I really do appreciate your time tonight.
Man,
okay.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and enjoy retirement.
Exactly. We're doing quote unquote retirement. Stick around for a bit after we end that recording. We'll just talk for a sec.
Yep.
But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. This is the Nothing Sacred interview with Ernie Stevens.
Yep.
And I am Cruise Control.
And I'm Maxwell Silverhammer. And that's the
story
there,
there.
bitches. See ya.
We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred with Maxwell Silver.